Cool. All right, we are live. Back again. So I don't know how many of you gold pickers just spent the last almost hour and a half with us doing the Banjo Band live backup lesson with Kristen Scott Benson. But if you did, good to see you again. And if you're just dropping in as a gold pick member for this little hangout, welcome. Welcome back, Kristen. Thanks for joining us. Great job in that last hour plus lesson. I know people are excited. We've already got a comment here. Carl says, I can't wait to try out some of that banjo backup at the Minnesota Bluegrass Fall Jam this weekend. So he's, they said, you should bring the Grascals back here sometime. So I guess y'all have been up there. And
we have.
Yeah, and then we have a Minnesota bass player, or I'll say my sisters have a Minnesota bass player in their band. A lot of bluegrass in Minnesota. So yeah, very cool. So I thought for this little hangout here, it's going to be driven by the gold pickers questions and what they want to see, or maybe not. Maybe I'm just going to ask you what I want to ask you, and they can they can watch me. No, but if you do have questions, y'all put them on there. But I wanted to start off by just having Kristen maybe play something else for us, and then I just want to get my first question in of like, what's something cool that you've done musically lately, and something that you'd like to tell us about. We love stories here too, so pick us a little something and tell us a story.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do this for the tune, but I'll have to grab my phone. I wasn't planning on this, but when you said what have you been up to, last week I did a unique thing. Hold on a second. I have to play it on this.
Okay.
But the banjo camp that I teach in Brevard, North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Banjo Camp, that's led by Bela Fleck. And the other teachers are so good at arranging things for banjo, and we'll do like an orchestra basically for banjo where there will be 5 parts because there are 5 classes. So each class gets a part, and it's just this real layered arrangement. The individual parts by themselves aren't hard at all, but you put it all together and it sounds kind of like a big band type thing. So I just kind of got a little bit of a complex because Adam Larrabee, who is Overland trained, composition graduate degree, he brought something. Greg List, who teaches at Berkeley, brought something. Of course, Bela, arranges for all kinds of projects. So I just got to thinking I should be able to do that. So this is a rough draft. I'll tweak it and mess with it. But this is 5 banjo parts for the song. We're in the money. We're in the money. That big band stuff seems to work well. So it lasts 2 minutes. This is my rough draft to see if the idea was even going to work. So we'll do this because this is unique and it's a chance for me to, nobody's heard it. So we'll see here. So this is 5 banjo parts, and there would be about 20 for each part. So here we go. Wow. And it's a bad mix and everything, and don't worry about that. Just listen to the idea. It's hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, I did that last week. That's what I was doing for my fun creative thing, and
Wow.
it's real different, but it's so much fun to play with 100 banjos. And
Yeah.
everybody, it's going to move people to insanity, or they're going to love it. But
Yeah.
a lot of 100 banjos makes a lot of noise.
I did something for the first time at my last banjo-only cabin camp that I'd never done, which Bill Evans taught at with me, and we had about 30 banjo players, and we got everybody in a circle in a field and did Cripple Creek, and filmed it with a drone from above, and it turned out so
Fun.
good. It was so fun. Everybody just loved it. Stuart says, won't let Kristen know that he just discovered Benson's song, "Owe Me a Little Faith," recently. It's a great song that's really impacted me. Thank you so much for doing that song. So,
Man, thank you, Stuart.
Yeah.
I love that song too. As soon as we're always looking for those songs that we feel like the writer wrote for us. And when I heard that, I thought, well, one way or another, I'm going to record that song because it meant so much to me. So I'm thankful to hear that and glad for it.
yeah. Chris says that type of arrangement there with all those parts would sound great for Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
That's a great idea, and
Yeah.
I'm going to file that away because I had fun doing that.
Yeah.
That's way different than anything I usually do, but I got pretty obsessed with it, and it was just, it tickles me. It's funny to me the way
Yeah.
it sounds and
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. All those.
that's a
moving
great
parts.
idea.
Yeah. So what have you been working on recently? What are the things that are getting you excited about the banjo? Anything that's just re-sparked some interest and pursuit?
Yeah, I know you can relate to this. What I find is that, I've never one time picked up a banjo and not wanted to play it, ever. It's never happened. The banjo's here and I'm like, oh, I don't want to play it. But what happens is, just like any other job, you get so focused on what's next. And you're blessed and super privileged if you have a what's next. But as a result, so much of what I do is just get ready for the next thing. So for instance, next week I'm playing on a session it's an album of all Tom Paxton songs. So I'm not exactly sure what they'll be, but I've been listening to Tom Paxton because that's the kind of session where you just walk in and you get your chart. It's hired hand type session. It's not a band. So projects like that, thankfully, there's a steady stream, or you're getting ready for the next camp, or maybe the Grascals are going in, or Wayne and me are looking for material for the next session. So as a result, sometimes I lose that connection just with the banjo itself, and then I teach all day, and then I want to, be with them, and I might not want to play, and that's really where you dig in and get better on your own. It's great to have it in your hand, but so what I find is that the number one thing that gets me excited, that keeps me connected, is listening to the music that made me want to play in the first place. So if I can reconnect to an album or to even a whole era of records that sort of reignite the spirit of being a teenager and learning to play the banjo, that gets me excited. And then I kind of get that new breath of energy. But doing something like that, that's just a vanity project. I don't imagine that I'll ever do anything with it, but I just wanted to see if I could, so that's a great thing about music. It never lets up on you. As much as you want it, it's there. And if you don't want it, it'll just sit where you left it, right? So it'll give as much as you want, but it never demands it. So it's really up to us to stay focused and growing.
That's great. Yeah, I go through a lot of periods of discouragement and drought with what I do. I have to be very intentional and try to find things that excite me, because it is a job, and but at the same time, or what I should say is, I haven't really thought about going back and listening to some of those things that got me excited in the beginning. And I want to try that. I want to go back and listen to some of that. For me, because I wasn't raised around bluegrass at all. So it was just, I didn't grow up with Live at Carnegie Hall record playing in the house or nothing like that. It was, one of the first things I remember was going to a friend's house, and his dad, who was from Canada, always worked in the garden with his shirt off, even if it was 40 degrees. And he had he loved music, and he had a big record player, and he had speakers mounted outside of his house that would blast into his garden, and he had Raymond Fairchild, Whoa Mule Whoa, just going. So I was like, what is that, And so I ended up buying a Raymond Fairchild record, and just kind of captivated by the novelty of it, but it was good entertainment, good playing too, and then of course moved on to Earl and stuff, and I still remember what it was like, because I was pretty old, and I still remember what it was like to hear that banjo and just wonder how somebody could do that.
Totally.
That was, I didn't grow up around it to where it was just normal and natural. Oh yeah, he's a banjo picker. It's like, I heard it for quite a while before I ever saw anybody do it, and I just wonder what do their fingers even look like to make notes come out of an instrument like that. And
so how old were you when you started playing banjo?
I think I was 19 or 20, I think. So
in college.
I was in college, yeah. Yeah. I was in college, and the funny story I tell, just abbreviated, was I found a banjo in a closet. It was my uncle's from years ago, and he had some finger picks in there, and I didn't know how to put them on because I didn't have anybody to tell me, and I put them on backwards like this.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't keep them on. The strings would pluck them off, and I was
Sure.
I was determined. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to keep these on, because I love the sound of the banjo. So I decided to go to a bluegrass festival and ask somebody that played. So I went to this bluegrass festival, and I saw this band playing on the stage, and there's an older guy playing, and he seemed like he really, he knew what he was doing. I was like, oh, I'll try to go ask him. So they got done with their set, and I snuck around back, because you can always sneak around back in bluegrass festivals. There's no security. And anyway, the guy was putting his banjo up in his case, and I said, man, you mind if I ask you a question? He said, what? I said, how do you keep your picks on? And he says, what? And I got out my picks. I said, how do you keep your picks on? Like I try to play, and it just must take a lot of finesse to be able to pick this. And he says, give me your hand. And and he took my hand and he twisted my picks around. I was like, nuh-uh. Because it just didn't look intuitive to do that,
Sure.
And he says, go try that for a little while and see. And to my horror, I found out later that was J.D. Crowe that I asked.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious.
How epic is that? That makes it such,
it was
a good story, but now it's amazing.
I was a grown man.
I love that.
I didn't know who he was. It was so obvious I didn't know who he was, because there's other people waiting to talk.
So did you reconnect with him ever and tell him the story?
So anyway, so then I moved to Nashville, and I was playing banjo, country bands, but I was mainly playing piano but playing banjo and mandolin too, and we played this. I was with Taylor Swift, and we were playing this huge festival in California called the Stagecoach Festival. It's very eclectic, and have pop and R&B and bluegrass, and so they had a big hotel there where they put all the artists in the same hotel, and so it's neat to be around in the lobby and see everybody going through there, and I'm there, and I see JD and his band walking through the lobby, and I was like, oh man, because that moment had haunted me for a while, so embarrassed, but I was like, I've got to go ask him. I've got to do it. So I stop him and I say, Mr. Crowe, I said, you won't remember me, but I just wanted to, say hi again. I said, I met you one time in Overton, Texas, Overton Bluegrass Festival, back behind the stage. And he says, hey, you were that guy that had his picks on backwards.
He remembered.
Yeah, and he turned around to his band. He's like, this guy had his.
Hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, though. I mean, you were there playing the same show
Well,
as him.
yeah,
That's cool.
and so anyway, we were laughing. I was laughing too, and he says, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm playing banjo for Taylor Swift." He says, "It worked. It worked. My advice worked." So
I love it.
So anyway, yeah, we laughed about
it.
that. Then I saw him another time or two down the road, and we would always laugh about that. But I use that example.
You know, people, they have no concept of learning prior to YouTube.
Right.
Right? I mean,
right.
When you're trying to learn, and if you never saw someone do it, you don't know what it looks like. That's hard for people to relate to these days.
Yeah, and you can only hear it. You can't see it, you know. And if you don't know somebody that plays, and there just wasn't any bluegrass. There's more now, but there just wasn't any bluegrass in the area of Texas that I was in, that I grew up in, really. Not a lot of pickers around there. I just didn't run in those circles. So, you know, I use that story to folks at camps and stuff to encourage people to always ask questions, because you can't ask any more dumb questions than I've asked. And most people are afraid to ask questions. And what I've found is that I've made a lot of progress by asking people questions on how to do stuff. And what I find is that most people are scared to do that. So when you ask somebody how to do something, a lot of times it takes them by surprise at first, but then they're thrilled to tell you how to do it because maybe nobody's asked them. And
I mean, like I had a guy show up once for a lesson. It was his first lesson, and he had picks on all 5 fingers. And you know what? It was like, yeah, hey, buddy, we don't use these 2. Take those off. And he goes, oh, okay. Now he knows for the rest of his life. I mean, you don't know until you know, and once you know forever. So it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I had grown up playing piano, but I hadn't played much country piano at all. And I got to town and I got an opportunity to play some country piano. I got a job playing piano for Craig Morgan, who's a Grand Ole Opry member. And so I had to learn all these records really fast because we were going to Hawaii for a tour in just a couple of days. And it was hard for me to hear a lot of the piano on the record. I was freaking out, like I thought, because this was my biggest gig up to that point, and I thought he's going to want me to play it exactly like the record. And so I looked on the credits to see who played the piano in the album and then I got my Musicians Union directory, and I called him. His name's Jim Moose Brown. He's a big-time songwriter and great guitar player. And I told him, I said, hey, you played on these Craig Morgan records. I've got the job playing piano for him. Do you care do you have some time to show me what you did on these records? He was like, I guess. Yeah. And so he gave me his address, and I drove up, and we spent like 2 or 3 hours on the piano and had a ball. I had figured it out pretty much. And he just says, man, I just got to tell you. He's like, I've been in town for 30-something years. He's like, nobody's ever called me and asked me what I played on the record, you know? And he's like, he says, I thought it was weird at first, but thanks for calling. You know, so we've been kind of, friends since. He wrote It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere for Alan Jackson, and he produces all Jamie Johnson stuff and everything. He's incredible. But anyway, it was just, I found from an early age of like, if you'll just swallow your pride and go ask people questions, boy, you can, you're going to, I guess, run into mean people here or there, but most people aren't mean, so.
Yeah. I think maybe being female, I had an advantage in that they're less likely to be mean to me, especially when I was young. So I would ask a lot of questions, and I had a great teacher as well, which was a tremendous help, but I was never afraid to ask. I mean, I had to know, so I didn't shy away from that. if I had an opportunity, I was gonna ask if if there was someone there. And the better the musician and the more established they are, I find that as musicianship increases, there are exceptions, but generally a giving spirit does as well. So it's not like guys are territorial or protective of their stuff. It's not like that. Maybe it was back in the day, but it's not like that anymore. I mean, the better the player, the more happy they are to talk to you, I think.
Yeah, that leads right into a great question that was asked. If you had to do it all over again, what would you change and why? I guess they're talking about your banjo journey.
I was going to say musically or career-wise, or
I think maybe as you're learning, going back and looking at maybe a trajectory that you took learning, or maybe things that you didn't work on or didn't invest in early that you wish you could have.
I have an answer for that because I've thought about it. So a couple of the things that I did right is I was blessed with a great teacher, and I listened to him, and if I thought something was cool and fun to play and good, and he said, just so you know that sucks, don't ever play that, I would listen. And his saying was, when you're 30, you'll get it. And it didn't take till 30, but he was right. So when I knew that I had access to someone who knew better, I went their way and I took that advice. So that, and having a great teacher, that was a great idea, or something that went well. Another thing that went well is I played with whoever I could play with. So one band leads to another, and I've been in a band every day of my life since I was 15 years old, and I realized that that's a gift. But sometimes I think people are a little bit too picky about the job they take. They think they're too good for that. I just never had that mentality. Even if it was filling in with bands, if they needed a banjo player, it was an opportunity to get to know those people and learn the stuff. I did it, so I took every opportunity in front of me. The number one thing I would do differently is I had no idea that music theory existed. I mean, I was probably in my 20s before I even realized that there was, for lack of a better word, a curriculum of things that you can learn that's just how music works. Everything was intuitive. So if I had had access to, again, this is way before I was learning, I started in 89, I guess, so this is before internet, and I had no idea that there was a blues scale. And that's going to play over ones, fours, and fives. And it's like, that's just a simple example of, there's a blues scale, and if you play those notes, it's going to sound good over the whole song. I had no idea any concepts like that were out there, and I really wish I had, because I think it would have possibly made me way better when it comes time to improvise outside of a bluegrass context.
Yeah, very great answer. Chris wanted to clarify the filler licks that we talked about earlier, that are at the end of the second and fourth phrases. Are those usually played instead of one of the reverse parts?
Well, there are different lengths, but generally we'll just play them over the whole thing.
Yeah,
so that measure. Chunk of time goes away and a lick is inserted instead.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever attend any bluegrass festivals where you aren't performing just to listen? Do you ever go out and able to listen to Wayne and them?
No. If I was going to get to do that, I would dare say it'd probably not be a bluegrass show. I would love to see. Now, it might be a banjo show. It's two different worlds. There's the banjo world and the bluegrass world. And man, we're just so inundated with it. And again, that's a great thing that we're thankful for. But I can't say that I would opt for a bluegrass festival if I'm off. I'd probably figure out something to do with our son or the family.
Yeah. Yep. How old were you when you started playing? About 13 or so?
For banjo, I played mandolin sooner than that, but I was never real serious about it, and it was just a real casual side thing that I did. But when I started playing the banjo, I got obsessed.
Did you? Very cool.
Totally, yeah.
Did you have siblings that played music?
No, I have a half sister who was a good bit older than me and didn't play at all. But my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was a professional mandolin player, and he was
Wow.
really good musician and singer. So I had his influence, and then my dad played for fun. So a common bond when my mom and dad met was bluegrass. So I did, unlike you, I did grow up with it around the house,
Yeah.
and it was always just there. So I have no memory of life without it.
So did your grandpa ever go to Nashville and do that whole thing?
He never lived there, but they were pretty successful. So they were in the 40s on WBT, which was a powerhouse station in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that it was Whitey and Hogan and the WBT Briar Harpers, and
Oh,
Hogan
wow.
was my grandfather.
Wow.
And in fact, if you want to, on the album that I did called Stringworks, that the tab book matches, the front part of that is Whitey and Hogan. They played brother-style duets, and they played Foggy Mountain Top, and we pulled that from a live radio show in the 40s, and that
Wow.
track starts with them, and then we come in and play after, and man, they kill me. I mean, they're so good. And then the announcer at the end goes, "Those dirty-faced boys from the mountain,
Oh.
Whitey and Hogan, best kids you've ever seen," you know. So your grandparents are always old. The whole time you know them, they're old, you know, and there he
Yeah.
is getting referred to as a kid.
Oh,
It's just
how
sweet.
about how old was he there? He's probably late teens, early 20s, something like that.
I'd say so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so cool. And so he was a South Carolina boy?
He was North Carolina,
North
so
Carolina.
he was born in North Carolina and settled in Charlotte, and WBT was really, I mean, it was a rival and had the same kind of reach that WSM did.
Very
So
cool.
they did what Flat and Scruggs did in this area, where they would play their show every day, and then they would go
Yep.
play schoolhouses and stuff like that, but always in time to be back for the morning show on the radio.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you trace that history and what caused WSM to rise as the castle station above that and above the Louisiana Hayride and such. Of course, the Grand Ole Opry was a big part of that, but also just the geographical location. I never knew this until Kyle Cantrell pointed it out to me, but where Nashville is centrally located, so whenever they could get that 50,000 watt tower, you're in the center of the circle, so you've got a radial expansion that the signal goes to, and they could stretch out in 360 degrees, whereas you get in North Carolina, half your signal's going out into the Atlantic. You get
Ocean.
New Orleans,
Totally.
Shreveport, half your signal's going out into the Gulf. So Nashville is just geographically situated to help
It's
WSM
also,
prosper.
yeah, I think it's also one reason so many bands live there, because I've heard people
Yep.
talk about it before. Within 12 hours,
Yep.
you can play Oklahoma City, or you can play,
Yep.
in southern Florida, or you can be in the Northeast in
Yep.
Pennsylvania.
Yep.
It's
A 12-hour drive
It's
from
crazy.
Nashville puts you in touch with over 50% of the nation's population. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, bus driver told me that one time. I assume he was telling the truth. I never did the
Yeah.
math on that, but it does. It puts you in New York, it puts you at Dallas, puts you at Houston, puts you at Chicago, puts you in, all
To the
over
coast,
place. To the
too.
coast.
Yeah, I mean,
to
you're-
the coast. Mount
you're
Airy,
in
North
Myrtle
Carolina.
Beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. What's next on the docket for you?
So just the normal weekly lessons. The Graskels play. We're off this weekend, and then we play, I believe, in Gatlinburg, and that'll be the last show of the year. We're so excited about that, just to be home for a while.
Yeah.
And, then Wayne and I are going to play 2 of the Sundays at our church in December, because we can never do that.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to that, and I
Yay.
do have the December 10th thing with Bill Evans and
Yeah.
Ron Block, and I have the Tom Paxton session next week, and then the week after that, I'm recording with Darren Nicholson.
Oh, cool.
He's a great guy. Do you know him?
Just been around him a little bit. Yep. But I don't,
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's one of the funniest people I've ever met. So I'm playing on a record for him the week after that. So it's just, man, it's a life full of music. So how blessed is that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll have to do more together. And
I'd love to.
yeah, I would too. I love you and Wayne and how you teach, and of course you're playing and everything. One more question: if my goal is to play for church backup, is it best to route the tab or attempt to practice to a YouTube video or Spotify to get together, or best to get together with other players?
I would say it depends on the style of worship. So sometimes they'll attempt to do a bluegrass thing at our church, which is
like,
not always too authentic, right? But but then other times it's very fusion. So we're playing with a contemporary band. So you have to be more versatile if it's going to be that contemporary style of worship. You're just going to, I swear, like I would probably try to get a lesson from Ben or me or somebody and work over these songs and try to get a game plan, because sometimes
that's tricky.
You can come up with one little roll like just little things like that, and that's kind of your texture for the whole song. But yeah, I would get together with people, but I'd do as much prep beforehand as I could.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll do another one of these live things. One of the topics that you piqued my interest with was going over the patterns on the neck. I think that's something you've thought a lot about. So maybe we can do that one. And then I want to do one of these with Wayne on mandolin.
Oh yeah, he's so good.
Cool. He is so good, man. He was one of my first mandolin heroes, maybe the first. So cool.
People don't realize he's so much better of a musician than I am. And I say that not as his wife, like it is just a fact. And I just wish more people knew the extent of his musicianship.
Oh, yeah, I do. But, yep. Well, thank you, Kristen. Y'all have a good night. Tell Wayne I said hello and hug him. And I'll be in touch. And yes, again, you're find everything over at ksbbanjo.com. And don't miss Gold Pickers. Don't miss the December 10th Banjo Live event that Kristen's doing with my friend Bill Evans and my other friend Ron Block. Those are like three of my favorite people in the whole music world doing stuff together. So very cool. All right. Thanks, Kristen. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Uh-huh.